Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons. Lick diamonds. I nailed it, dude. I nailed it.
You got it.
We were talking about it earlier. Everyone, this is going to be a really, really cool one. Not often do we get to interview other people that have podcast shows and really fast moving, fast growing, pretty exciting and cool podcast shows. So Hunter Levine.
Yes.
Right?
I don't have a cool slogan yet for mine, but yeah, Levine.
So tell everyone what you're doing.
Yeah, so me, my dad, and a group of friends have started a new podcast called Captain's Collective, and we have that on iTunes and Stitcher and part of Waypoint Collective. And really what we're doing is going around meeting different fishing guides and industry leaders and trying to get wisdom, stories, insight, tips, tactics, everything you can imagine, just especially depending on the guest, to try to kind of take that and put it into podcast format so that people can learn and hear and enjoy. There's a lot of content created in the fishing community that revolves around the visual. So it's a drone shot of something. It's a jumping tarpon. It's a sight fishing redfish. It's these fun, cool, exciting things. But this is more about, okay, how did you get into fishing? What have been challenges? What have been things that you've learned that can apply outside of fishing? So we try to do a podcast where we sit down with these captains face to face and we really try to draw out and mine out gold from them that the listeners can enjoy and actually apply into their life.
I think the coolest part from listening to some of your episodes is that backstory, right? You know, you do see someone, let's just take like Tom Rowland because he's a mutual friend. You see him on TV and you don't know his whole backstory. And I didn't know, I had no idea he lived in Chattanooga. And the one day I went and hung out with him, no lie, we spent the first half of the day at Whole Foods. So we're sitting outside and people kept coming up to him left and right. And it was the weirdest thing. They weren't talking about fishing. Like one or two did, but the majority of them were talking about working out. And I was like,
he loves it, man.
Yeah, it's great. I was like, dude, why are they talking to you about working out? And he's like, Joe, you won't believe this, but he's like, I go down anywhere in Florida. I walk in any Cracker Barrel in Florida and like people are coming to get my autograph. He's like, here in Chattanooga, my hometown, he's like, half the people here don't even know I have a fishing show. They think of me as the workout guy because he's got a home gym. Like the stories like that, I was like, that is so cool. And yeah. You guys are extracting a lot of really cool stuff like that. Just hearing these people's backgrounds and the stories and the memories and the mistakes that you can learn a lot from. I think it's brilliant, man.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun doing it. And really it came from us having a desire to do this ourselves. My dad's a fishing guide. I hope to one day later down the road be able to do some guiding myself. And, you know, I work the boat with my dad and I hang out with a lot of these guys and we'd have conversations. And I just remember being like, man, I don't want to be a dork and have my phone out and writing notes and stuff when everybody's hanging out at a dock somewhere or whatever. But man, this is great content, great information. And so the podcast really just aligned with my desire and our desire as a group just to learn more and grow. And so it's been fun just this past few months to really get it rolling.
So what is your background? You mentioned your dad here. Who's that? And were you always kind of this curious student of fishing?
I definitely wasn't a student of anything growing up. Typical guy, I guess. But my dad worked for the Fish and Wildlife Commission for 30 years. I was born right outside of Tampa. We lived on hundreds of acres that my dad had a deal where he would patrol that land off duty, and grew up fishing like a lot of guys. I started with brim and bass and cane pole, and fishing and hunting and the outdoors was just a really normative part of my life growing up. We didn't have TV. We didn't have cable when I was a kid. We didn't have neighbors until I was in elementary school. My mom went back to college and we ended up over in Crestview near Destin. And my dad and I just always did it. And I got really into sports. And so as I got a little bit older and a little bit more into sports, you know, I didn't fish and hunt as much in middle school, high school, and even a little bit in college. But it was a very special thing in my family. And my great-grandpa was a fisherman out of Tampa. He was a mullet fisherman. And it's always been a really important piece of my life. And along the way, it's also been a way for me to connect and make friends. And so that's where Josh Wells, who does it with us, came in when we were in high school. And I was just going through a lot of transition with my friend group in high school and trying to, you know, really find people who would help better me and point me in the right direction. So Josh and I started hunting and fishing a lot together. And then later on, we met Austin Reinhardt, who does it with us. And it's just been a blast for us to go around. We all like to saltwater fish. We like to fly fish. And we're trying to get out and just kind of do everything from interview a guy who has been up in the Smoky Mountains for generations to interview tarpon guides to interview hopefully some deep sea guys. So it's been a lot of fun for us just to go around, to hang out, to fish, and to meet these guys.
So who came up with the idea to do it?
I think it was my initial idea because I listen to a lot of podcasts like the Tim Ferriss show and things like that are a little bit more geared towards life and leadership. And my wife listens to all sorts of different podcasts. And I was like, man, I really would love to have a podcast that would be geared towards captains. And so, we were all sitting around talking about it in the fall, and I started researching the gear and trying to figure out what would it take for us to do this. And eventually we just pulled the trigger, sat down with a guy in my area. It's a great friend of mine, Harry Spear. He was a legend in the Keys in the 80s and 90s, and now lives up in our area, and sat down with him and interviewed it. And from there, we just started kind of taking it one interview at a time, and we release them about every 2 weeks.
That's cool. And so you mentioned your dad, and he was with FWC, and then he became a captain. Is that right?
Yeah, he retired, and then he was trying to figure out really what he wanted to do. And he had tried a couple different things, and fishing's just always been a big part of his life. And he's always thought about guiding, and he just decided, you know what, I'm going to learn as much as I can. And when I feel comfortable doing this, I'm going to start guiding. And so he started that business about 3 years ago. It's been doing really well. It's called FC Charters. He's got a 23 Parker Big Bay, and it's got a big tower on it. And he's great at triple tail and redfish and trout and a lot of the inshore species.
Cool. I listened to your podcast with Tom Rowland, and I believe Josh explained your dad is, imagine the most intense person you've ever met in terms of like just going all into something and studying it and just engulfing themselves, and then times it by 100. He's like, that's your dad.
Yeah. He's just an intense guy. Like maybe I'll stop by the house or whatever, and he might be watching YouTube videos on knots, or, he's testing different knots. He's learning how to pour his own weights, and he just loves it. He loves to learn. He's read a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts. He's always been a learner. And I think that's something that he's instilled in us. Josh's dad passed away several years ago. And, that's really bonded our relationship as we've all got closer. I see Josh as a brother, and my dad will learn stuff and teach it to us. And I mean, we're always trying to do everything we can to get some sort of little edge. And really the learning is the fun part. We don't learn to have fun. Learning's part of the fun. And so for us, we do it as a group. We're really enjoying it.
And so you're in Tallahassee. Is Josh there too? And where's everybody located?
Yeah. So Josh, Austin, and I are all in Tallahassee. Okay. My dad is located out in Carabel, Florida, near St. George Island, Dog Island, Panacea, St. Mark's, that kind of area, and fishes all along that area of coast.
Cool. So is your dad, you mentioned your dad a couple of times. Is he part of the podcast too? Is he joining you on some, or is he crazy busy on his own, basically his own business of guiding people?
He's definitely busy with the business. Like some of the ones where we've traveled in the past, he's not going to cancel on clients or, miss 3 days of fishing to travel. I think that's the challenge for him. Yeah. He's sat in on a few of the interviews, one with Nat Ragland, who was also a guide in Homosassa in the Keys, one of the early tarpon guides. So he's sat in on some of them. He travels when he can, but it's more of the younger guys that actually do the interview piece. I lead the conversations, and then Austin and Josh kind of ask good follow-up questions. And we found it just makes it like a fun conversation happening when there's several people sitting around a table. It just makes the whole thing more enjoyable. And a lot of times Josh or Austin will ask great questions that are follow-up questions that's just not where my mind is at the time. And so we find it to be really helpful. And we do a balance of like, we know where we want to go with the podcast as far as like, we know that we want to talk to this guy about these two things, but we try to let it flow a little bit and kind of see where it goes, which I know you guys do that as well. And we found it to be helpful.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you guys too. I mean, one thing that I think you've done on all your episodes so far is like going face to face. Like this is kind of in the middle, meaning basically a Zoom call. If you're listening to us, we're also recording this, by the way. You can watch it on YouTube. But you guys are like going out and meeting these people face to face. Is that right, on all of them?
Yeah, and we found that to be really helpful. You know, we're interested in, if there was a situation where we couldn't get to somebody, what would it look like to try to do something like this through Skype or Zoom or some sort of online chat thing. But we enjoy that part. To us, it's, you know, it has to be first and foremost about our journey, about learning and building relationships and meeting these people. And from that, it'll stem into the content that's the podcast. And so right now we found a really good rhythm that we like where we're at right now, which is every 2 weeks we release one. That's what's working for us. And on that, we're just getting a little bit smarter in aligning our travel. So naturally we might end up in certain cities at certain times of year to do certain types of fishing. So now we're just kind of looking through, talking to people, trying to say, hey, who should we interview here? And it's been a lot of fun. So we're a couple months already in the can, logged up, ready to go. And so we haven't seen too much reason for us to move away from the face to face. And we just found it to be better on building relationships and making the guides feel more comfortable. Plus, it's really fun for us to go out and to see their fishery and to see where they are building their business, which we've done that with most of the guides.
And to get to fish perhaps as well.
Every once in a while, get to fish. We know it's their business, and so it depends. You know, some of them, they really enjoy that, and so we've gone out. You know, with Bo Basso. I mean, he was
Cool.
super generous to us, and we had lunch with him, and we did an interview with him, and he just kind of took us out and showed us around a little bit of his area. Just an incredibly generous guy, and one of the most enjoyable people that I've been around from the captain's perspective. And sometimes that happens, but we don't want to come off like that's our end goal. Our end goal is not to like get free fishing trips with them or, you know, anything like that. But that happens some, and that's a lot of fun. And we enjoy seeing how they think about their business, how they think about fishing. And we find that we always tell them this, if we can go to dinner before, or if we can hang out before, it's just going to be a better podcast because we're going to have a little bit of relational equity there, and we can build off of that.
Yep. So when you're going into these interviews, you mentioned that, you know, each of you think a little bit differently, which is natural. Do you have something that you're always trying to like a big takeaway? And more specifically, is it like, all right, I want to get this captain's exact like tactic on how is he hooking into so many tarpon, or is it a certain fly or a certain technique, or is it on the business side of it? Like how did they grow? Because some of these guys, I mean, it's like almost unimaginable. Some of them grown these massive businesses with like zero marketing. Some of them are horrible marketers. Like some of them don't even have a website, and yet they've built a business where they can fish 300 days a year and get paid for it with like literally no marketing and hardly even a website, just all word of mouth. So I'm curious if the big question was, because I know I threw two things in there, is, you know, do you have like, is it more tip related, or is it more business related, or is it something else?
It really just depends on the guide. So we try to kind of look at each situation and say, what can we really pull from this person that would be helpful? So there's a captain that runs a charter called Lion Tails Adventures out of Destin. And he's really good at the Instagram piece, and he's really building a good YouTube following. And so when we sat down and interviewed him, we focused a little bit more about marketing and social media and how he's thinking through that. We talked about fishing, of course, and his story. But we just realized that Lionel was really good at the marketing piece. And so we wanted to interview that from him. The most recent one that we released was Jim Ferrier, who's predominantly a tarpon guide out of Homosassa. He does some other things as well. I've actually known Jim my whole life, and he is an incredible, great tarpon fisherman. Fun guy to be on the boat with. And he doesn't have a website. He doesn't have an Instagram. So we're not really going to go sit down and talk to Jim about how to, you know, build an online following. He's word of mouth. He's got a Facebook page, and people, at the end of the day, everybody understands in the fishing business that word of mouth is king. That somebody fishes with you, they have a great time, and they go back to their office or to their friends, and they're talking about it. Man, you wouldn't believe how many fish we caught, how many fish we saw, you know, how great this guide was at XYZ. And then they're talking to their friends at work, and then who do you think they're going to go fishing with when they go? They're going to go with the guy that they know. So it's been fun. We're trying to interview a diversity of captains, you know, everything from people who focus on one species to people who are a little more tourist oriented, who are just going to chase what's biting. we're trying not to be political with it. We're just trying to go out and interview a wide array of different captains. And so that's our approach to it.
And so far, mostly Florida based, I assume, since you're having to go meet them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly Florida based. We hope to, there's a couple of things we'd like to see more of personally on our end. We'd like to see more deep sea and even some freshwater, you know, a little bit different. We've mostly been saltwater and flats fishing. That's just what we run in. And so that's what's been most natural for us and what we're interested in. And we'd like to get into outside the state, Louisiana, Texas. It's really a time and finance thing as of right now. And, you know, but we hope to. And we've released one podcast of a guy, Eugene, out of fly fishing the Smokies. And that one, we got great feedback on that. We understood it was different than the rest of our podcast because it was trout in the mountains, but there was a lot of incredible takeaways from it. Eugene really knows the history of his area well, and he talked about how he uses that in his guiding business and how he'll be with clients and he'll be out on the water telling them the history about different areas, telling them about here's what this tree is, here's what's happening, and this stream with this hatch. And so if you're a saltwater guide, you're listening to that, and you can take a lot away from that, even though you have a very different fishery. So we're hoping to expand it more and more as we go.
Cool. What would have been some like aha moments where, you know, you and Josh and Austin are like hitting each other on the car on the way home saying like, I can't believe it. Like for me with Tom Rowland about like, I had no idea he was the gym guy in Chattanooga. Like 50 men every morning were coming to his house at 4 something in the morning to work out. Like any of those, just like, wow, I had no idea about this guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I remember the very first podcast we did, I sat down with Harry Spear, and like I said, Harry's become a good friend of mine. And he was talking about all the success that he saw in his fishing career. And he said something really good. He said, success is a gift, pursue excellence. Pursue excellence. Success is something that people give you, or they acknowledge that you have as you're pursuing excellence. I thought that was really good because you see a lot of people in today's world that they just want to be quote unquote famous. Success to them is a certain amount of followers on Instagram or etc. What Harry was talking about is no, let success be you trying to become the best that you can be at what you're trying to do and pursue excellence. And he said, great anglers, and this has been a common thread, he's like, trying to be a great angler, whether it's a tournament fisherman or a guide, it's like a pie chart with all these different pieces, and some of the pieces are big and some of the pieces are small. It's everything from, obviously you need to be able to cast, you need to be able to know, understand the tides and where the fish are, but then there's all these small pieces too about how to communicate to your client about where to cast and how to have different tips for them to be able to better understand how to control their line or etc. Like things like that, these small little things. And Harry said a lot of times the difference between great guides and good guides is those small little pieces. So we pick up a lot of stuff like that. We had a lot of fun talking to Tom about how fitness has fit into what he does. There's a lot of guides who, it's hard because you're on the water all day long. The sun's on you. You got up early. Maybe you're on a pull-in platform, or you're climbing up and down from a tower or whatever it is. And it's hard to get out and to work out, but in the long run, it's going to allow you to be able to do what you love longer. And we haven't released this one yet, but we recorded one podcast with the guy, Larry Hastings. He started working on boats at 13 and he retired in his mid 70s. So as far as I know, he's got more time on the water than anybody else that I've met. I mean, he has over 60 years on the water. It's pretty incredible to think about. And he's in incredible shape. And so it's like, we walked away too, really thinking about, after meeting with Tom, like, how do we have better holistic health so that we can do what we love longer? So it's been a lot of stuff like that we're trying to, you know, kind of boil all these things down and find common threads.
Yeah. So what other common threads? I assume, and you mentioned this on Tom's, that these guys have to be pretty decent communicators, meaning, and they almost, I mean, fishing guides are almost entertainers, right? Because you can be the best fishermen in the world. Like you can literally like be able to predict where the feeding fish are going to be all day long, and that could be your gift. But if you can't talk to someone and at least entertain them and be friendly and loving and like just make them feel good, it's still going to be tough to grow a successful business as a fishing guide.
Yeah. One is you got to be good with people. That doesn't necessarily mean super talkative or that you have this huge, big personality, but you need to be able to connect with people, make them feel like you value them. as a client. And I've heard a lot of people say that as a guide, it's like you're an entertainer. You're trying to help them have a great day. They've spent a lot of money. They've made travel plans. They're out there. And even if you're not catching fish, telling a story or telling, information about here's kind of how these fish like to work these oyster bars, or here's what this bird is, or, asking them questions about themselves. And then Tom even took it a little bit further and says, yeah, sometimes you're an entertainer. Sometimes you're a therapist. They're going to open up on the boat to you about things going on in their life. And you just need to be good with people. And then the second thing that we definitely see is this desire, like we'll sit down with people who've written books or have TV shows or have been fishing for 40, 50 years, and they have just as much hunger to learn as I feel like we do. Even though they've already written on it and published on it and done it for a long time, they really have this desire or even an obsession to try to understand how they can get better and what these fish are doing. And so those are the two main things: good with people and a big desire to learn.
It's one cool thing about fishing. It truly is a forever learning sport, passion.
Mm-hmm.
It's my brother Luke always uses the puzzle analogy. It's like getting a 5,000 piece puzzle and you finally get it together and you realize that you're not even close to being done. It just keeps going and going and going. And you're always putting those pieces together. Just when you think you got, let's just take tarpon figured out, the next trip, you're like, what just happened?
Yeah. Yeah. And we ask about, hey, are there apps that you use? Are there tools that you use? I mean, we sat down with Rob Fordyce and he talked about how he likes to sharpen his hooks, and that kind of got our minds thinking a little bit because we've ran into that. So, I mean, yeah, we're always trying to mine out stuff. And really, truthfully, most interviews we walk away from, we learn a lot about interviewing. Like, we're not expert interviewers. We're learning as we go with this whole thing too. And so we openly ask for feedback from people who follow us about better questions, better guests, things. And so we walk away from most interviews really excited. And then, at some point we're like, dang, I wish I would have asked this question, or I can't believe I forgot to do this. So it's been definitely a journey for us so far.
How has it been reaching out to some of these big names? Because my brother and I were just like you guys, I guess 4.5 years ago, we came in the industry, not really knowing that many people. At least, you had your dad, but still that only gets you so far. I mean, you're having to reach out to people and ask for their time. Has that been tough? And have you received some no's? And
yeah, I mean, we'll have people, we haven't really had anybody be like rude to us. We usually just kind of like, when we interview somebody and we say, hey, who do you want to hear from? And they'll say, oh, you need to hear from this guy, my buddy. And then they'll give us his contact. And so we usually have a pretty good approach. Sometimes we'll throw up some Hail Marys, but we haven't had anybody be rude. We've had some people just say, hey, look, interviews isn't my thing. We've had some people just not respond back to us, and that's fine. I mean, that's, we're not trying to force anything. But for the most part, we find people to be pretty welcoming. The scheduling piece is the hardest piece right now for us. Just trying to figure out all that.
I can only imagine. It's tough for me getting people just to do a phone call or a Zoom call. I can't imagine having to go there and face to face. Or are you doing this on certain days? Like, are you having it because I assume you have stuff going on. You have a family and a little daughter and a job. Like, are you guys just like, are you sleeping at all to get all this stuff done?
Yeah. So we've been able to sleep pretty well. There's definitely been some times where we'll wake up super early. We had one trip to the Keys where Josh and I made that trip. We left at 2:30 a.m. But I've been doing that, like hunting and fishing, my whole life. So it doesn't bother me too much to do that. I'll say this, it really has not been as hard as I thought it would be to sit down with people and to make the trips. We've had this pace of trying to release every other week. We try to release an episode, and that's been a good rhythm for us. And we're trying to get smarter and more intentional when we go into an area. Like, I'll be in Homosassa, in that kind of general area at the end of the month. And so we're thinking through, okay, can we get 3 podcasts from guys from here to Tampa?
Got it.
If we can do that, now we have a month and a half. So it hasn't been as crazy. And you and I talked about this before, but for me, I really try not to watch a lot of television and movies. It's just not my thing. We don't have a TV hooked up at my house. So if my wife and we do watch a movie or something, it'd be on a laptop. And to us, like, we enjoy this a lot more than we enjoy that. And so we've just been willing to make some sacrifices time wise where, you know, you might be editing audio content or talking to somebody on the phone or writing interview questions or researching, but it really hasn't been that bad. And I think that if people have an interest in doing something, whether it's something like a podcast or wanting to guide part-time, like, actually sit down and write out how much time you think you'll take, and what are some, look at your phone. How much time are you spending looking at the screen of your phone? Look at your TV habits. How much time are you watching TV? Is it 20 hours a week? Is it 30 hours a week? Are you willing to give that up to do something that you actually really do love? And so that's kind of, for us, it hasn't been too bad at all. And it has been so much fun. Like, we were coming back one time from a trip, and Josh just looked at me and he said, "These are the good old days." Like, you know how people say, like, back in the good old days? He's like, "These are the good old days." So we tell ourselves that all the time.
I love it. Are you guys trailing a boat too when you go on these trips?
We haven't had to trailer a boat yet.
Okay.
We were joking that was going to be a line in the beginning to be like, "Hey man, we're excited to come in and interview you. We're going to trailer a boat. Like, where do you recommend going?" And then hopefully, like, somebody be like, "Oh, don't trailer a boat. We'll go out." But we haven't had to trailer a boat yet. That probably says more about the quality of our trailer right now than it says about anything else. But most of the trips are pretty quick, pretty down and back.
Cool. So what's the ultimate goal? Like, and I know you might not have an exact answer, just like if someone asked me what's our ultimate goal at Salt Strong, I don't know where the end is going to be, but, like, let's just say a year, 2 years from now, what do you hope this looks like? Is it, is it a business? Is it, is this something you guys could do full time, you think, or what?
Well, we don't really have a desire to do it full time, as in, like, not have any other job. So, Josh is a firefighter, loves his job. He has a great job. Great setup there. And then I'm a college pastor at a church in Tallahassee, work with Florida State, TCC, and FAMU students. I love what I would do. I tell people all the time, like, if you gave me $10 million, I'd still wake up and go to work tomorrow, because I don't work because I get a check there. I work because I love what I do. I believe in what I'm doing. And so for us, you know, the ultimate goal is not that we don't work our jobs. Our jobs aren't a negative thing to us, but we would like to be able to fund our fishing, and we'd like to be able to travel and to get different interviews. And really, I mean, as corny as it sounds, like, our goal is just to make the best content that we can from our learning experience. And we have a desire to be able to go and guide one day. And so we're just trying to learn for ourselves and enjoy the content we make, and be able to turn the tide a little bit from it costing us money to being able to make some money to be able to do the trips and buy the gear we need, and et cetera. So that's really it's a pretty modest goal, but I saw that you guys have the goal of the theme park, and that's my goal is to have free passes, man. That sounds awesome. I'll go to a fishing theme park. But really that's the goal, is just to be able to do it and it not cost us money. You know, if we could make money, that'd be great.
Love it. I heard you just say that you wanted to be a guide. Is that right?
Yeah, later on down in life, I would like to be able to do that. I'm not sure time-wise what that would look like and how that would fit into what I'm doing. But when I work the boat with my dad, I love it. Like, I love watching clients catch their first triple tail or their first cobia. And so that's something I definitely am interested in doing, and helping my dad with his business. So right now I don't have my captain's license personally. Yeah. But I haven't taken the test. It hasn't been something that's on my immediate radar, but you know, I want to be the best fisherman I can be. And so it's something that we're definitely looking towards down the road.
Cool. So you mentioned your job too. I'd like to talk about that briefly. Do these college kids you're working with, and the Christian, it's a Christian base, you said? What is it?
Yeah. So I work for City Church Tallahassee.
Okay.
It's a church located near Florida State University, FAMU, which is a historically Black college, and TCC, which is a large community college. Yeah. And so my job is to lead that effort, which we have a service in the middle of the week that's designed just for college students. It's got music and preaching and different environments for them to connect. We have different Bible study groups. In the fall, we'll have about 20 Bible study groups going on throughout the city. And the thing I love the most, and the thing that we do at City Church U is what it's called, is we have what's called a student leadership program. So this year we have 70 student leaders that we're investing in, helping them be able to be effective on their campus and be able to grow in their faith and reach people to Christ. And so that's my quote unquote my job. I use air. I love it. I went to Florida State University. I was, I was right where they were, and I love getting the opportunity to work with them and work with the team that I get to in Tallahassee.
So do they know you're into fishing?
Oh yeah, everybody knows I'm into fishing. Yeah,
Oh,
that's not a secret. I don't take most of the students out or anything like that. That's just to set a unrealistic precedent there, because we have a couple hundred college students at City Church that are a part of this. And but yeah, and I mean, I'll talk about it in certain illustrations, not over the top or anything, but it's definitely a big important part of my life.
cool. Yeah, I was wondering if you could tie in fishing with some of that. I mean, there's obviously so many overlapping themes with Christianity and Jesus and his disciples and fishing and fishers of men. And
Yeah, I mean, we definitely it feels a lot more like I've been able to tie things that I've learned from just working with people in ministry and leadership, and some of the initiatives that we have at City Church has been able to kind of help me understand more about what I'm doing with Captain's Collective. So it's been a little bit more about my faith informing my fishing than the fishing informing my faith, for lack of a better way to say it. But I've really enjoyed it. Obviously there's people out there that are in the captain community or in the fishing community that they don't like that, but you can't please everybody. So I don't try to hide it on either side.
Love it. So I want to do something kind of fun. You mentioned that you reached out to some guides and they haven't responded back. Let's just see if we can maybe reach them. Can you name one or two that have just not replied back that you'd love to have on the show?
I can't think of any that haven't replied back, just because those have been Hail Marys, as in like just sending, but I can tell you some people that we're hoping to have on the show that we have been in talks
some
with.
Hail Marys.
Yeah. So we have talked to Flip Palette.
Oh, cool.
And we're hoping to have Flip on the show. I'm really interested in talking to him about some stuff that, he's known for certain things, but I'm really curious. And he's pretty all around holistic outdoorsman. He likes to bow hunt. He likes to turkey hunt. He likes to do a lot of different types of fishing. And so I'd really like to talk to him overall about his view on the outdoors. And so we got Flip Palette. We're hoping, we have a couple TV shows that we'd like to do with like the Flats class, and I'm trying to think through off the top of my head who else would be good. Not sure. Who do you think we should interview?
Ooh, that's a good question. I personally love, and what we're trying to do too is, a lot of these guys that you want to have both, right? You want to have the people that maybe aren't as well known that are amazing fishermen. And I told you offline about like Captain Mike Anderson, some of the stuff I learned about him and just his personal life. I think that's fascinating. So I'm kind of fascinated with some of these people that are kind of celebrities. Mm-hmm. And to learn about the even like C.A. Richardson, you mentioned Flats class, we worked with him for a while, and I got to fish with him on, 8 different occasions where we'd spend at least one, if not 2 days back to back. And you learn so much about these people and what drives them. I think that part is pretty fascinating.
Honestly, I get just as excited to sit down with a guide who isn't famous, for lack of a better phrase, as I do somebody who has a television show. I talked with Tom about this on the podcast we did with him, but just because somebody has a television show doesn't mean they're necessarily the best at any particular species or type of fishing. And just because somebody doesn't have social media or a website doesn't mean they don't know what's going on with a certain species. And so we've really found there to be a lot of value in both. It's not about who's better. And there's a lot of different mindsets and mentalities behind it. And we're trying to get that wide array. And so for us, we like it when people who listen to the podcast give us suggestions. We have a list that I don't have in front of me of just different captains that people have messaged us on Instagram or sent us an email. And we take those things serious. We might not be able to get to them in the next year, but like we do take those suggestions serious. Somebody sent me a guy who kind of specializes in sharks. I know you guys recently did some stuff on that. I'd love to learn more about spearfishing, and Nick Stanzik. We were this close to getting to interview Nick, and we're going to do it. He does sailfish or swordfish. Sorry, he does swordfish. So there's a lot of different things that we kind of have on the horizon.
So speaking of Nick, if he's listening to this, I tried to get him on, I think too early, and he responded, and it wasn't like, hey, what's a podcast, but it was kind of like, hey, what's a podcast? I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that have no idea, not necessarily like what a podcast is, but like, what does that even mean? It can be a little bit intimidating. And guys like my dad, he's just now getting into it. I mean, a year ago, he literally did not know what a podcast was. It was kind of like me with blogging. When I first heard about blogging, I just thought it was a bunch of like stay-at-home moms talking about knitting and stuff like that. And then you realize there's this whole amazing world of people blogging and doing cool stuff. And I'm sure you've probably found that similar. All of a sudden you get in like one podcast and it's this like never ending rabbit hole of all these different cool stuff. Like, wow, there's so much amazing content out here.
I told Tom this, but I think we're at the very beginning of a tipping point where podcasts are just going to become incredibly normative in life. As technology advances on phones, as technology advances in cars, things like that, it's just going to become more and more accessible. I got into a car the other day. It was my friend's Tesla, which was an awesome experience to ride in. Yeah. And the screen, the kind of technology there makes it so easy to listen to podcasts. It's like you're going to hop in your car. It's just going to start playing the podcast you like. So it's eventually we're going to have a turning point where everybody does know what it is, and everybody's going to be podcasting because they want to curate what they're listening to fit their interest. And it hasn't happened. Like outdoorsmen are usually pretty late adapters on those types of things. Like there's a million leadership podcasts out there. There's a million finance podcasts out there. But there's not a ton of great outdoors podcasts out there. And I think that if everybody can brace for impact, that eventually everyone's going to find out how easy it is to listen to them and how you can be rigging rods, cleaning a boat, driving to the ramp, out on the boat. Like you can do you can listen to them anywhere. Right? Working out. Yeah. I can't listen to podcasts and work out, but you could do it. I mean, you could do it in any situation. It's just right now, I think the biggest thing is just waiting for people to learn what it is. And once they do, then you hope to be a podcast that's already got great content that's sitting right there. And we've had people not know what a podcast is, and then met them and said, hey, let me see your phone. I'll pull it up for you. And then they text me or call me a couple weeks later and they're like, hey, I listened to every one you guys have, awesome. And they're into it. So I think it's coming.
Love it. And you guys have a website and everything too. Like you are building a brand out of it, even though it sounds like this is not going to be a full-time job anytime soon. Right.
Yeah. It's captainscollective.com. We're definitely, like I said, like we're hoping that we can just be able to fund what we're doing and fund our fishing. And if we can make some money off of it, I think that would be awesome. But for us, hopefully we never lose sight of this. We really just want to learn, and we want to be able to create content that we love, and not stress about, did it make a lot of money, or, how could we make more money? I don't want to stress about it. It's not, this is something fun for us to do.
I could see you guys turning it into a book. Have you guys thought about that?
Oh yeah, I definitely thought about that. I felt like, if we could hit 150 plus interviews, and then we could go through and mine out all of the common themes and kind of boil down some of the podcasts to a couple pages per guest, that would be a really cool book. Cool. To be able to Captain's Collective and be about that thick and it'd be filled with basically all the key insights and stories and stuff.
Yeah, that would be my challenge to you. Well, this is being recorded, so we'll see if you guys do it. We're not going to do that because we have a whole. I got to build a theme park. I don't have time to write a big.
Oh
book.
Man, I can't wait.
But one of my favorite books, it's back there somewhere on that bookshelf, is Tim Ferriss did that with the Titans, Tools of Titans, and I read that sucker twice. Like I highlighted it. Like there's so much knowledge. There's cool stories, mistakes, learning lessons from all of these. If you guys don't know, Tim Ferriss got a great podcast, and he did the same thing. I don't remember how many interviews it was from, but he basically took some of the most successful, I guess is the word you want to use, some successful in life, marriage, love, money, obviously a lot of money stuff, health, and literally just curated it and put it in this amazing, like 630 page book. And it was awesome.
Yeah. I've personally learned a lot from Tim Ferriss in that book, even on health. Like I herniated a disc a couple of years ago, pretty bad, and had to decide if I wanted to do surgery or what I was going to do. And, I was introduced like through that book to a couple different people who do mobility and different types of exercises to strengthen that and fix that. And it's not 100%, but it's pretty close to it. I mean, and so I think those types of resources are great. We'd love to make a resource for fishing that basically somebody could buy and have basically the top hits, the best takeaways from 150 plus interviews.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you guys got to get busy if you're only doing.
Yeah, I expect an endorsement now.
Of course. Like I said, I threw the challenge out. Now I gotta help you guys market it. And
yeah, we would love that. That's my least favorite part, to be honest with you. I'm not super into the marketing piece. I love the content, and
yeah,
you got to market because you want to get your content out there. You want people to know about it. But like, I don't get a lot of satisfaction from sitting on computers and social media myself. So, we could use every bit of marketing help we could get.
We'll see what we can do. So who can you share who's next? Like
yeah.
It sounds like you already have some that have already been done. Yeah. It's not published yet.
Yeah, there's a Captain Lionel out of Destin, Lion's Tail Adventures. We sit down and talk with him about marketing and how he's kind of building a business and building, for lack of a better phrase, brand in the Destin area, which is a high tourist area. And so it's its own unique kind of setup he has there. We're releasing one with my father on Father's Day. That's going to be focused on how he got into guiding and some of the things that he's really good at. We did one with a guy, L.R. Hastings, who I mentioned earlier, who has the most time on the water that I've met so far. Maybe there's somebody out there who was on the water as a profession longer, but the guy got paid. The first check he ever got, he was 13 years old for working a boat. The last check he ever got, I believe he was 76. So I'm really bad at math, but I'm pretty sure that's 63 years.
That's awesome.
So that's a lot of time on the water. Yeah. We did one with Dave Mangum, who is known for tarpon fishing. And so that one's going to come out. And I'm trying to think, we got a couple more lined up that we haven't recorded yet. So we're really excited about those.
Awesome, man. Let's shift it slightly. And you and I talked about this offline. We both have, young kids. What are you seeing as like the biggest challenges? There's obviously some obvious ones, but how are we going to make sure that our kids are fishing? How are we going to make sure we give them, the same opportunities that the guys like you and I had?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I'll first kind of start with working with college students. And before I worked with college students, I worked with middle school and high school students. There has been this kind of trend in parenting that is, how many things can we get our kids involved in? And it's almost like there's this idea that if we could get our kids involved in enough things, then they'll turn out okay, or they'll turn out successful, or whatever that definition might be for them. And so what I've seen happen is the kids get really, really over-programmed, and they're doing just a lot of stuff. And every night of the week, they're doing something. They're a part of 18 different things. And I think that with kids, one of the things that can be helpful is teaching them how to say no to stuff, how to figure out what really matters to them. Like in our family, even though I love fishing, like Sunday morning church is something that is important to our family. And so I don't care what the tide's doing. I don't care if there's an insane bite going on. That is a decision that our family has made, that this is important for us to be a part of a church community, and we're going to do it. And so that means saying no to other things. Also, like, my kids don't have to do 18 different sports at one time, and my entire life revolve around driving kids from one activity to the next activity. Like, it's okay if we help them actually figure out what do you love more? Do you want to do this? Finish your commitment. You can try this out. But like, I think that people feel this pressure to try to create a resume for their kids so that they can maybe get into college, or I don't know, maybe they're comparing to other kids. So I see that being a big obstacle, because where does fishing fit into that when you just don't have time, And for me and my family, going out to the beach, going out on the boat, it's an important part of something we do as a family. My wife, she likes to go on the boat. My wife likes to hang out on the beach. She doesn't enjoy having a rod in her hand. That's fine. I don't force that. But as a family, we do that almost every weekend. At some point, we're hanging out together near the beach. And so that's my first thing. I think also you and I talked about this too, but technology and you know, a lot of times people think of technology as something that's passive and it's not really trying to influence you, or it doesn't really have an agenda, but technology does. Like when people design apps, their desire is for you to be on that app as much as possible. They make more money. The more you're on that app, the more money they make.
Yep.
Netflix wants you to binge watch. The more that you binge watch, the more that you're going to be connected to Netflix. And if they change the price, you're going to pay it because it's such an important part of your life. Like, and we can just go on and on. Well, technology can take so much so fast without people realizing it, that people can look at their phone. I love that Apple made the screen time monitor thing and realize, holy cow, I spent 4 hours on my phone today.
Yeah.
And then somebody says, hey man, have you been fishing? No, I'm too busy. Well, I've watched 30 hours of TV. I've been on my phone an average of 4 hours a day. And so I think technology is a big obstacle. Like obviously we're using it now and it can be good, but people really have to be careful. And I think just throwing a screen in front of a kid's face all the time and it basically becoming a virtual pacifier, I think there's some really bad consequences from that. And you and I talked about this, but I think parents just have to make it a commitment. Go to the beach and shore fish. If you don't have the money, wade, buy a kayak, you know, get a captain, go out with a captain, save up money, go out with a captain. And fishing teaches you a lot about patience, about respecting people's boats and gear. I mean, so there's just so many things. And we could talk more about how I think, like from a big picture sense, we could get more kids out fishing. But personally, for my family, I want my family to be able to experience that.
Yeah. I talked about this on a prior episode. I don't remember which one, but, and I'm probably going to do a whole blog and video about it, but it's the power of the dip net, you know, a little $9 or $10 net that you can get at Walmart. And so I've got a 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and 2-year-old. The 2-year-old, the little boy, he just wants to get dirty. 7-year-old likes to fish. The 4-year-old doesn't. And I'm fine with that. Just like my wife, same as yours, loves being on the boat, loves to reel in a fish, does not like the act of actually fishing. She likes catching.
Yeah.
But my daughter is just like that. My 4-year-old, she gets so bored. But I've recently, we live across the street from the lake. And so we walk over there usually every weekend, and just giving her a little dip net so she can get tadpoles during sometimes the year. She gets little minnows. She finds little snails and she loves it. She talks about it. She's telling her friends about the big snail that she got. And I was like, man, the power of this little, and never once, like the last time we did it was last weekend, not a single time did she actually like touch a fishing rod. We caught one little bass and she went and like barely touched it with her finger and was like, ew. But it was still like the memories I created out with her. And at least it's in her head. At least as she gets older, she's going to have that experience. And it'll be up to her to decide if she wants to do fishing with her family or not. But at least I've given her the shot at. And I think you're right. So many parents, because it's tough to be a parent. It's so tough this day. It's always been tough, but it's tough this day and age. And it's so much easier to give them, you know, that, what did you call virtual pacifier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Virtual pacifier.
Yeah.
Watch this video so that, I mean, truthfully, deep down, it's what's easiest. And in my family, we don't make decisions off of what's going to make the most money when it comes to jobs, when it comes to anything. And then we don't make decisions based off of what's easiest. And I think that when you look at older people and how they look back at their life, a lot of things they regret, they made those decisions off of, well, it just was more money at the time, or it just seemed easier at the time. And it's just, I don't want to look back at my life, especially at my children, and say, oh, well, I just did that because I thought it would be easy, you know? And so for us, like, but I'll be honest. So my daughter is about to be 3. We don't have a television in the house. So sometimes she'll watch something on a laptop or whatever. I'm not trying to act like there's never a time where she's looking at a screen. It's really easy. She has a bird feeder. She can play with that bird feeder, and she refills that bird feeder every day. And
the bird feeder and a dip net. That's all you need.
There you go. And my daughter's obsessed with sharks. I think that's more the Baby Shark song than it is the fishing. But, you know, we take her out on the boat, and, you know, one day we went fishing. I put her on my shoulders so that she could see. It was a really clear day, and we were wading around, and she got to see a bunch of fish, and she was just on my shoulders for like 2 hours. I had to like get a lacrosse ball and like work out the knots from it. But those are the things too that, you know, those are special memories for me. You know, like I'll never forget that day. But I don't think anybody's like, man, there was this awesome day where my daughter just watched 4 hours of television and I was able just to be on my phone as she did it uninterrupted. It's like, that's not a real significant memories. So for us, that's kind of our approach to it.
Man, hard hitting. So we always promise in every episode that we have some type of fishing tip. I'd love to hear you've come from an interesting background. You've been fishing since you're a young kid, and you lived on this, sounds like a pretty amazing property growing up. The stuff that most kids don't get to experience this day, to go play hide and go seek and do fun things like that in 100 acres. What are some of the biggest mistakes that either you made or you see a lot of weekend warriors making? Because I believe that's also holding a lot of people back, because it can be intimidating. And you guys talked about this on Tom Rowland's podcast, is, what you see on here, especially on social media in particular, is you're only seeing people's highlight reels, what I call it. You're not seeing the skunk days. You're not seeing the frustrated days. You're not seeing the days where it's just like nothing worked and nothing was biting. And I think that's holding some people back, right? Because if, let's just say you're a single dad, you got kids and you want to show them a good time, you go to Walmart or Bass Pro and it's intimidating. You don't even know what you're buying, and you get up there and it's just a bust. And you're like, well, man, everyone else is catching fish. Like, my entire feed, everyone I follow caught a ton of fish this weekend, and it's real frustrating. So can you share, like, in your opinion, some of the big mistakes or misconceptions, things that just someone can learn from, especially for the weekend warriors out there that maybe just a little bit frustrated with fishing?
Yeah, I think the absolute biggest thing, if I could just get this message out to everybody that wants to be a great angler, is don't act like you've already arrived. Don't act like you know it all. Don't act like you're the quote unquote man or the quote unquote woman, and you're this big deal. There's this sense in fishing that, and I think social media is tied to this too, it's very image driven. And so it's like, I want to be known as like the best, snook fisherman or whatever. And so I'm going to do everything I can to put off this persona that I got it all figured out, even though I'm 20 years old or 30 years old or whatever. And so the phrase that I've kind of always heard in my life is, a full glass doesn't receive water, meaning that if you act like you already know everything, don't be surprised when people don't want to teach you things. And you might look like you're there, but man, there's a lot of great fishermen out there, and they don't want to invest in people who act like they're too cool and to already know everything. I don't think that's going to be an issue with this community that you have here, but that's the biggest issue I see, is just, I just want to look cool at the boat ramp, so I'm not going to talk to anybody, and I'm not going to ask questions because it might make me look like I don't know everything. And okay, well, you're just not going to learn well. Like, you don't have a posture of a student. And for us, like, we're always asking questions. And I'm some of the guides, like, I text them and just like, man, I'm having trouble with this knot and it's not working on this leader. What do you think I should do? And like, I don't care if they look at me and go, oh, this guy doesn't know as much about leaders as me. Of course, I don't know as much about leaders as you, but I don't really care about having this image of being the greatest, fisherman of all time. I just want to be the best that I can be and learn. And so that's my first one is, if you see somebody that's doing well, that throws a cast net well, and you want to learn how to throw a cast net, don't be too prideful to go up to them and say, hey, could you give me some tips? Could you work on this? And you know what? There might be some jerks out there. There might be some people out there that don't want to, but there's a lot of people who'd be happy to help you if you just take the posture of a student. Be respectful when there's certain information people don't want to share, as far as like, there's a difference between, hey, can you show me how to do better trying to find tailing redfish, and hey, can I take all your spots? It's you gotta have some feel there. That's a big one. I think the other one is with the social media. One of the things that I've noticed with social media is every time you hop on there, someone's going to catch a bigger fish. Maybe your business that you have, your job, you don't feel like you're doing well in the job, and you're fishing, and then on social media it looks like someone's crushing it at their job, and so you're fishing and you feel guilty that you're not working at your job, or you're at your job and someone's fishing, or you finally go fishing and you catch a permit but someone caught a bigger permit. And that's not what social media, like, it doesn't matter. And I think, like, if you can actually just, when you start getting upset or you start getting envious, or you start, just ask yourself, like, does it really matter? Does it matter that I caught 2 fish and they caught 4? Like, this isn't a contest. There's no trophy at the end. And don't let social media rob you of just enjoying fishing, and learn to love the process. Learn to love fishing. So you went out and you didn't catch any bass. Okay, well, that's all right. And somebody on Instagram did, and they got to post a photo and you didn't get to post a photo. Okay, but like you got out, you enjoyed it, you learned something, you maybe you learned that at that lake it gets a little bit deeper on the north side of the lake, or just learn how to enjoy the process and the journey. And we tell ourselves all the time, man, I can't wait to be 60. What's it going to be like doing what we're doing right now for 40 years? Like, how much will we learn?
Yeah.
So that'd be my advice to people. I don't know if that's as technical as you would want it to be. It might be a little bit bigger picture.
No, I mean, that's what everyone needs to hear, right? Because the only way to get the technical stuff is to do what you just said, right? Is to be inquisitive and to understand that most people truly do want to help you. I remember I was on the boat with CA, and he's pulling me around, and I completely blew it was a nice snuck, completely screwed up. And instead of just like pouting, I was like, man, like like what should I have done differently there? And like he gave me some of the best tips, and you catch the next one. Or, the opposite is I could have just been proudful. Hey, I'm one of the founders of Salt Strong. I know this stuff. And I just hung my head down. I was like, dude, I screwed up. Like coach me. How could I have done better? And he told me exactly what I should have done. Exactly where I should have made the cast, and exactly how I should have how to retrieved it. And it was the opposite of what I did, which is why I blew the fish out. So yeah, I think that's some of the best advice, and it's what our whole company is about teaching, right? And it's interesting. We had a lot of weekend warriors. It's definitely the majority of our members, and you definitely get some newbies. Although to your point, everyone's got that macho bravo, like, hey, I don't want to call myself a noob or a Guggen. But you're getting a lot of full-time fishing guides too that truly do just always want to become better. And I think it's been so cool to see that about this sport, that the majority of people always want to be learning.
Yeah.
And realize they haven't figured it out yet.
And for me, a way that I try to keep that spirit is to try to force myself outside of my comfort zone a little bit. And so, if you've never done a certain species, like it's good to remember what it feels like to be new, and that'll help you be better to people and pay it back to them. So like, I'm not a great mountain trout fisherman by any means at all. And the only kind of really knowledge I knew about mountain fishing happened to be like when I was a kid, we would go up some and I'd hang out with my dad, we'd do it. And it was pretty much all topwater dry fly. And most recently we went up to an area and you could catch a few on dry fly, but if you really wanted to catch a lot of fish and if you wanted to catch some of the larger trout, you needed to be able to nymph fish. I didn't know anything really about nymph fishing. And so all of a sudden, here I am, and I remember what it's like to walk into a fly shop and not know anything at all about a certain type of fishing.
Yeah.
Well, that's good because there are some things that I'm better at than others. And if somebody's trying to learn something from me, I can remember what it's like to be in their shoes. And so, I think it's good too for even if maybe you're really good at redfish, or maybe you're really good at snapper or bass or whatever. Don't be afraid every once in a while to put yourself in a situation where you're the newbie, and it's okay to be the newbie, just you're gonna leave that level of knowledge in fishing a lot faster if you just acknowledge the truth about where you're at.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So we'll end it on what are some bucket fish? What's next for you? Any cool places or certain species you want to target?
So when I was down in the Keys last time I was down there, I got to present a fly at some bonefish, and then now I'm just like in my mind, I'm just like, man, I really want to catch a bonefish. I've never caught a bonefish before. It'd be really cool to catch a permit on the fly. I've never caught anything with a bill. I've never caught any type of billfish. So those are for me, like, I'd love to do that. So that's kind of my goal for as far as new bucket list species. I haven't caught a peacock bass, and I live in Florida. I've never caught one of those either. I'd catch that on anything I could catch one on. I just want to see one, so
yeah.
I'd love to catch those if anybody wants to show me how, or if Salt Strong has a peacock bass fishing course or whatever, I might be checking it out. So
we did post some places we tried out. We were coming back from Isla Mirada, and I never caught a peacock bass either. This is just 2018. And we're like, let's just stop at a couple places. First place was a bust. Second place we went to, it was behind like a Home Depot and a Publix. I mean, this is how crazy it looked like what you and I would call a drainage ditch. but it was just like a little canal behind there. And we literally the highway's right next to us, and we caught peacock bass right there. And posted, and just using our same saltwater paddle tail lures, we were just dragging it along. And I mean, these things are so aggressive. They fight like crazy. It was nuts. And I was like, we're in downtown Miami, basically behind a Home Depot in a drainage ditch. Who would have thought?
There's going to be a lot of people at that Home Depot this weekend, hopefully, doing it. But yeah, I think that urban aspect of the peacock would be pretty cool to catch a peacock bass in the city. I just think that would be pretty neat. I mean, yeah. So that's the bucket list for me.
Cool, man. Well, so tell everyone again where they can find you on iTunes and your website. Everything's just Captains Collective. Is that right?
Yeah. captainscollective.com on Instagram and Facebook. And, if I can just give a plug, we're not great marketers. And so the best thing that you could do if you enjoy the podcast is just to help us get the word out about it, because we have no clue what we're doing on the marketing end. So every little bit of word of mouth help goes a long way. Subscribe, give it some stars, give it a review if you like it, and hang out for the journey.
Yeah. So please, everyone, go into iTunes. If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to us, do that as well. Captains Collective as well. Hit the subscribe button, give them a 5-star review. All their stuff is top notch, and go through the past ones. They're really, really good. I think you guys, you don't give yourself enough credit. You're like, oh, we're not the best interviewers, but I mean, it sounds amazing. You guys ask really good questions, and it's got really, really good flow to it. So I've been enjoying them, and I can't wait to see some of these Hail Marys that you guys get on in the future. I think it's so cool.
Awesome, man. Thank you. I appreciate the support.
Yes, sir, brother. And maybe next time we'll all have to do a face-to-face and get the rest of the crew on there.
I would love that, man. I'd love to have you guys on the podcast. And thanks for giving me the time today.
Absolutely, brother. Keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Salt Strong Nation. We out.